Hey everyone, Gaijin Goombah here. Well, I just got back from my annual trip to Japan a few days back and brought with it plenty of jet lag and a head cold with about 2 days of recovery before I turn right back around and head to Retropalooza. Which, by the way, will be at the Arlington Convention Center on October 1st and 2nd, come say hi. But needless to say, creating a deep, culturally analytical video in less than 2 days with a royally screwed up sleep schedule and my head feeling like 3 atmospheres of pressure wasn't likely gonna happen. But I sat down the other night with all the pictures I took of all the places I visited last week and I thought to myself, why do I always talk about Japan in my videos? Why does it always seem to be the center of my focus? And why do I always go back to visit many of the same spots time after time when I visit? So with a full dose of NyQuil, please allow me to exhaustingly explain the conclusions I came to after 26 hours of no sleep. It's easy to brush off the idea by saying, oh well, I grew up during the anime boom of the 90s, so of course my obsession with Japan is natural. But I really don't buy that anymore. For one, the wild take, overly expressive anime style of the 90s died off with the popularization of moe through the melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, and even still, I look back to what I used to watch and recognize that I've kinda grown out of it. One could say too, since my childhood revolved around games from Japan like Mario, Zelda, and so on, that subliminally my mind was molded to love Japan. But let's be real here, when we were kids, no one got the Japanese imagery. I mean, even to this day, there are people who don't have the up and up when it comes to the tanuki suit. So what is it about this country the size of California that makes me love it so much? The music, the culture, the food? Even that's hard to claim. Japan's been borrowing from other cultures since the early ADs, mostly from China. No, really. Clothing, written language, food, even philosophies and religion have been borrowed from early China and adapted to the Japanese way of life. So what is it that pulls me and countless others in? Well, I think for starters, what little Japan has that is truly original is beyond fascinating from a folklore perspective. Shinto alone holds a pantheon of over 8 million kami, each one with their own unique story and history. This also doesn't count the near limitless number of yokai monsters that function as the antithesis of kami. To put it simply, Japan itself is fascinating in its limitless number of folk stories. These not only make amazing books or movies, but also a great subject matter for games. Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of pantheons with several gods and goddesses with their own stories, but Japan just never seems to end when it comes to the historical spice of folklore. I guess another thing that pulls me and people like me into Japan is just the level of weirdness the country can get into, all the while publicly presenting a very stoic, calm, and peaceful attitude. Maybe it's years if not decades of repression, or maybe it's just a matter of finding the appropriate time and place to display it, but when Japan gets weird, they get really weird. Seriously, do a Google search for shunga and you'll understand what I mean. Even if people don't want to acknowledge it, the level of unbridled insanity is intriguing at best and obsessive at worst. Some folk will look at Japanese weirdness like a train wreck. Can't look away but don't want to acknowledge it, while others glorify and wallow in it. Maybe that appeals to our American tendencies to be ourselves no matter what the rest of the world says. In some cases, maybe that's specifically why we indulge in Japanese weirdness. It's different, it's rebellious, it's something the majority of the populace deems incorrect, and to spend time in Japanese weirdness is a form of rebelling against that norm. Basically, it boils down to self-expression, something that we in the US have been all about for quite some time now. And I think for me, one of the things that really has me drawn into Japan as a person is their perspective on philosophy. Yes, I do understand that that statement is at least semi-contradictory, as concepts like Buddhism and Confucianism came to Japan by way of other countries like China and Korea, but I think the unique relationship between the US and Japan post-World War II brought with it a greater vehicle of possibility than I can think China or Korea could bring. The US had a lot of involvement in rebuilding much of Japan after we firebombed it to the ground, and I feel that because of that, there was more of an opportunity to exchange not only physical items, but philosophical concepts. Simply put, I believe the intimate relationship between the US and Japan post-World War II was what allowed us in the States to expose ourselves to the unique philosophies of the East. Could China and or Korea do the same if not better? That's very possible, but I think due to how World War II ended, Japan just became a more accessible vehicle of understanding. But back to the philosophy itself. Eastern philosophies, especially Buddhism, provide something that we in the West receive very little exposure to: the concept of bettering the self. Many Western religions and beliefs, particularly Judeo-Christian ones, focus on mankind being weak without divination. That is to say, people basically suck and need a god or gods to intervene in order to have a good life, go to heaven, yada yada yada. But philosophies like Buddhism, though, went the opposite way. They instead focused on the self and the empowering through the self. I mean, when you really think about it, these philosophies are all about you making active change in your life, to grow by your efforts to become whole, and you see this motif in all manner of games and anime. Mega Man, great example. Each time you defeat a robot master, you get stronger, and only when you have all of the tools, when you are whole, can you advance through Wily's castle. Metroid is another great example. Samus can only advance in the game after certain trials and tribulations grant her extra power-ups. And anime? God, just any of them. Dragon Ball Z, Bleach, Naruto, Inuyasha. There was no outside force that granted them their strength or abilities. It was through their effort, discipline, and the bettering of themselves that gave them that strength. So why does that appeal to me and people like me? It's an ultimate underdog story. Typically, people who are into games and anime are considered to be weaker by the majority of the population. They're nerds, dorks, losers, or so they say. But these games and anime that focus on the empowering of the self through the self, in a way, it kind of gives us nerds hope. It presented us with the idea of, hey, you can be better than you are right now by your own actions. You don't need someone else to make it better, you can make you better. And while acting on such a principle is difficult, nonetheless, it gave us a sort of hope. I don't know, guys, maybe this is just the NyQuil talking, but I do think there's a lot more to loving Japan than just ninjas and anime tits. There's a lot of psychological culturalization going on that I think deserves a more well-balanced and thought-out look. But I think that's enough out of me, and don't worry, next week it's right back to culture and gaming. I'll finally have time to do it. I've got tons of stuff both on my channel and the Theor's channel to share, so stay tuned, be sure to subscribe, and also don't forget to check that little bell thingy near the sub bar. It'll actually notify you when one of my new uploads hits. Yeah, I know, that's what subscribing is supposed to do, but god, even us YouTubers don't even know what's going on anymore. But until next time, everyone, this is Gaijin Goombah, signing out.